ladies and gentlemen. It is 6:30, and it is football eve here in the Next Level studio. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tom Clemenson to my left, Jared Stamen to my right, Charles Strail behind the table tonight, and I am Eric Huffman. Welcome to the Next Level show. We are going to get into preseason talk about on football eve about the upcoming games that we have for tomorrow. All 5 games that we have going on for tonight. A little bit of a different, little short show tonight, about 5 minutes. We're going to talk about each game, some interesting tidbits or points to look forward to for each game, and then we'll cap it off, making sure that you know exactly where to find each game also. But for right now, we'd like to start off with our first game of the night, and we'd like to start with Tom to my left. He's going to go over Gaylord St. Mary's.
Yeah, so Gaylord St. Mary's hosting Rudyard, rematch from last season. Now, these two teams have faced each other since both programs started 8-player format. They faced each other 4 times in the last few years, and it's 2-2 head-to-head. Last year, it was Rudyard that hosted, and they were a little disappointed. Gaylord won with an astronomical score of 8-0. Big-time defensive game. Big-time defensive game. And we expect a pretty tight one again, although a little higher scoring for various reasons. One of the things that Rudyard's going to hopefully try and do, if you're a UP fan, going to try and get that secondary exposed. And
right.
They're young. They're young back there in the secondary for Gaylord St. Mary. So that's the key is to try and get something going, whether it's wide receivers or create some situations where you can get that run extended into that second level and challenge those young players. But you got to get through that line first. Gaylord St. Mary's got a couple of guys that you really got to keep an eye on. Charlie Cameron is leading the way. You've also got Logan Grenier, who is fantastic. Both those guys, big horses. And, it's funny. Cameron's the old man on the team as a junior and has done a great job really kind of coaching up the sophomores and some of the freshmen on that defense. And so we look forward to big things. One of the keys for Gaylord St. Mary, if they're going to be successful, is they've got to figure out how to take all of those reps that they've put in the last couple of weeks, especially as they installed the offense and defense, but over the summer too, as they've kind of worked out together, and slow the game down. That's one of the things that we saw in the scrimmage is, there's guys kind of catching themselves thinking through the process too much and not just reacting and anticipation. And that's going to come with time, but they don't have a whole lot of time because 2 big games for them on the schedule we've talked about before. This first one is Rudyard, and don't expect them to have an easy time of it. Should be a tight game.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. One question I want to quickly ask before we move on is how healthy is GSM coming into the season? I know we talked tremendous amounts about their health going into the end of last year.
Right.
But how healthy are they coming into the start of this one?
Oh, they're in great shape. I mean, so we were at Gaylord St. Mary last week for 4-team scrimmage, and one of the best things that came out of that was everybody was in great shape, at the end of it. So no major injuries or anything from the preseason rather. They're going in there healthy. And of course, the challenge is with a small and young team to stay that way as long as you can.
So, Tom, I do want to ask one quick question here. In your estimation, you know that the Snowbirds are most likely going to have a physical advantage up front and probably in the trenches as well. Who do you think might be a wild card player to look out for somebody who's not as familiar with the team, who might just be casually tuning in tomorrow night, who you think might be that X factor or wild card for this Snowbird team this year?
Well, I'll tell you, it's going to start with the quarterback. It's probably the most important position on any football team, but you're talking about Nathan O'Connell, and he's just a sophomore, but he's had some game action at the end of last season. He had to step in because of injury. Against Inland Lakes, one of their toughest rivals, and that's going to be another big game for them again at the end of this season, and also a playoff game. And he learned a lot from that. It wasn't necessarily the best outcome that Gaylord St. Mary was hoping for in either one of those instances, but as a brand new freshman quarterback in that system, true freshman, right? He learned a lot. He took a lot away, and I'll tell you, he was very focused in the offseason about improving his strength, improving his speed, and just improving his understanding of the offense. And you could really tell just in how he communicated with not only his offensive line, but the guys around him, whether they were split out or whether in the backfield with him, just kind of really coach on the field. Charlie Cameron's another one of those guys. So, yeah, I look for him to be a big factor because he can beat you with his arm, he can beat you with his legs, and he can beat you with his decision making. And again, even with him, though, got to slow that game down just a little bit.
Sure.
Well, thanks so much, Tom. And Charles, real quick before I move on to my game, and I'm sure we'll remind everyone at the end of the broadcast, but where can everyone make sure to be able to see these games tomorrow?
Sure. So if you take a look here, there's multiple places for you to see Week 1 football here on Next Level Broadcasting. So for Gaylord St. Mary and Rudyard, you can see it online at nextlevelbroadcasting.net or go directly to Gaylord St. Mary Athletics on YouTube for all the games up here. So Eric, for your game, you've got a multitude of ways for people to see your game. So that's a great lead in to you talking about the Blazers and the Elks tomorrow night and how people can see that game on 3 different platforms.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, Dale, Bert, Levi, and myself will make the trip down to Kalkaska and watch the Blazers take on the Elk Rapids Elks at 7 p.m. down there. The last matchup was in 2023 where Elk Rapids came away with a 47-22 win, and then played again the year before in 22, which Kalkaska won in overtime by 2 points, 30-28. And so Elk Rapids coming out of the leaders division of the Northern Michigan Football Conference, where Kalkaska right now is playing as an independent. The one thing I'll be looking forward to in this game is to see which team can set the tone and set the pace and be consistent. I know it's been kind of been the key word in preseason football is consistent, but looking at both teams' form going into the end of last season, Elk Rapids, they lost to East Jordan, beat Harbor and Tawas, then lost to Charlevoix and Mansalona. So, a little back and forth there where Kalkaska also had 3 losses sandwiched between 2 wins. So again, see which team is going to come out more ready to play and more set for this season. And talking about the upcoming roster for Elk Rapids, they had a couple players play there on both rosters last year. JV, the younger Darren, which Joel Darren being graduated, moved on. Now will be at the one that you got to find a replacement for. Who's going to take the place of him? And you got the younger Darren coming up, and I think Keaton Keel played some time on JV last year too. Was on both rosters, but this year, no both-way players. 2 really sizable teams. I think Elk Rapids has 20 on varsity and 24 or so on JV.
Oh wow!
And the great thing about the Elk Rapids JV roster is I think there's only maybe 5 that are sophomores. So man, they got some youth, and man, they are looking to build this program into a great future. As not too long ago, I think it was 2021, they couldn't even put a point on the board. So to see them gradually keep building up, and I'm really interested to see how well they put things together this year. The quarterback, Braden Flutie being the main cog in the wheel on offense, I'll be curious to see how the offensive line holds together, depending on what type of sets Elk Rapids wants to bring out this year, whether they want to go with multiple sets or they tone it down. Not quite sure. I wasn't able to get down and watch their scrimmage, so I'll be curious to see how that happens. And on the defensive end, they've got good safeties and a good secondary that can help keep games in check. But so I'll be curious to see how the defensive line can break through and possibly help out the defensive ends and whatnot on the defensive end and try to stall some of those drives, as they can put some points on the board, but some lapses on defense, they can give up a lot of points if they're not consistent on defense. And so my coming out of this would be for Elk Rapids, a mix of strong offense. They've had some huge shutouts and they can score some points, but some defensive lapses on the secondary can hold them. The secondary can hold them in games if the opponent is a passing offense. Otherwise, if they're running offense, let's hope the defensive line can hold that in. For Kalkaska, they can put some points up at times too, but again, inconsistent as well. And which team can find the balance and start strong under the pressure, getting that first win and getting that first notch into possibly a playoff run?
Yeah.
So just real quick here, Eric, I asked the same question to Tom. Who do you think is an X factor for Elk Rapids? I know the easy question would be Braden Flutie, second year in the system.
Yeah.
I think he had all those reps last year as the standalone starting quarterback. Now you bring back a seasoned veteran quarterback. Anytime you can do that in high school football, it's greatly going to aid in your advantage. It might not be an X factor question, but how do you anticipate seeing the level of execution changed from Elk Rapids from last year with the junior quarterback and inexperienced backs, receivers, offensive linemen now to having a senior quarterback under center there with the second year under his belt?
I would expect Braden Flutie being a second-year quarterback, now being more of a team leader too, and kind of being that assistant coach out on the field as well. Obviously, I talk about him basically every single week. We talk Elk Rapids football. So I think him being a senior leader and kind of one that the rest of the team can gather around and look up to, I think that would be a huge focal point as to where this team can go, and that cohesiveness and that camaraderie, that brotherhood. There's the word I was looking for, that brotherhood. You get a great team leader no matter what their age is. You get a great team leader, you develop that brotherhood, and they'll all run through that wall together or for each other.
And then talk about the 3 avenues that people can catch that game tomorrow night.
Yeah, tomorrow you can catch it on a multitude of things. Check it out on nextlevelbroadcasting.net. You can also, if you check out the Facebook page, you can also go on there and click on the link there, and it'll take you to the YouTube page. Also, you can watch it on YouTube as well. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And then also, you can also check out the broadcast live at elkrapidsfootball.com.
Yep. So that's going to transition us into talking about the East Jordan game tomorrow night. So I'm going to bring in Jared Stamen. Jared, you'll be joining me there up in Manistee as we'll travel up there. And I know you've been catching up on some footage of East Jordan here. And what stands out to you the most?
Yeah, Charles, I think, kind of the elephant in the room is who's going to take over at the next quarterback position. Their senior last year, the sole heart of their team, he ended up, graduating, playing baseball, I believe, at Michigan State. And, there's a big hole to be filled there, and the early reports we're seeing is that William Webb, who was sophomore last year, he's kind of more of a gadget player out of the backfield. If you look at a lot of East Jordan films, it's hard to miss number 8 out there. Breaking tackles, getting the edge, and next thing you know, we got a touchdown on the board. So he's going to be taking the reins on this team, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do because normally East Jordan seems to be more of a run heavy team, focusing on dominating the trenches, and now you're going to have this quarterback who's going to give you that X factor in the pocket. And, we're going to see maybe, you'll see a little bit of 5 wides, some spread, give the quarterback ability to use his legs to really take that next step instead of, keeping him in the pocket. With a guy like William Webb, you really can't do that.
Yeah, so Jared, my question to you would be, one of the biggest things that I think early on in the game will be an indicator of how the game will be played will be how Manistee plays defensively. You and I talked about it earlier. With an athlete like Will Webb, who's that dynamic, will we see man defense from Manistee, and will they allow those defensive backs to turn their back to the quarterback and allow him to scramble and pick up easy yards, or do you think we're going to see some match coverage in zone out there tomorrow night for the Manistee Emeralds?
Yeah, I really think Manistee. You got no film on this guy as a quarterback. You can't trust your DBs to turn their backs on a guy like that. You turn your back, next thing you know, it's 20 yards down the field and you're run to catch up. So, I really think that Manistee's got to play this slow. Football's a game of adjustments. I think you start out in zone, see what you got. William Webb, we have not seen him as a quarterback. It's a lot different getting handed the ball versus, handing off the ball and being the sole heart and, motor of the offense. So, I really think Manistee, being smart, is going to run some zone and make some second half adjustments if needed.
And that's a good point there. I think if you're looking at it like, hey, if you're going to bring pressure, make sure it's a zone pressure. You don't want to bring an all-out man blitz here against against East Jordan, with East Jordan having that ability to break, contain, break the pocket. So one of those things that you got to look out for is how does Manistee want to attack that defense. So your final summary and what is your potential X factor, you think?
Yeah, I do think the next X factor, that I didn't mention is Max Beal. He'll be coming back as a senior. He's kind of a do-it-all player for East Jordan. He has been around, being a senior in this league. One of, the more leadership positions on the team, getting some reps at running back. I think they might swing him out to wide receiver. Another guy to use as, addition to your seemingly star player in Webb. So I think Max Beal is that X factor to really watch for East Jordan.
Here's a quick question. I think Harbor Springs is the only area team that has a home game tomorrow. And some of these teams, quite a few of them, have to travel 2-3 hours at least. How does, and let's see, I'll pose it to Tom. How do these teams stay active and interested in playing a game after 3 hours of travel?
Man, I'll tell you what, that's tough. And I had to go through it as a hockey coach. You know, we did our state tournament going from Delta Junction, Alaska, all the way down to Kenai Peninsula, and that's a haul. It's like 6 hour drive, man. And then you get to a hotel, and the kids are pent up energy. You got a game the next morning, and they just want to go to the pool. And it's funny because I had a former coach and referee, a mentor of mine in hockey. He said, "Listen, Tom, whatever you do, keep those kids out of the pool. They'll be exhausted the next morning." And that's the thing, you know, as a coach, especially with youth sports, these were peewees, is balancing the, you know, the fun with, you know, the focus as well. So, you know, we kind of did a walkthrough and some of those types of things. But yeah, that's it. You got to get there early. You got to get them loosened up, kind of slowly ramp up to game time. I think that's a pretty good strategy as a coach.
And don't let them take naps. You take a nap, you might as well call it a day.
I mean, that's me.
It's hard to get kids motivated after a nap, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is. Thanks, Tom. At this time, we'd like to move on. Charles, I think, has 2 games that he's going to.
Yeah, so Eric, you and I will kind of tag team the Charlevoix game as they'll be going on and taking on Unionville Sablewing, as they'll be looking for Charlevoix, the Raiders, that is, their 6th consecutive year of making the playoffs. So if they've made it 6 straight years, trying to make it 7 if they can. Got to get off to a good start because the back end of that Charlevoix schedule certainly is challenging when you're looking at like Kingsley, Boyne City, some tough opponents in the back end of the schedule for Charlevoix. So they need to come out and start strong. And for Charlevoix, look for them to get a dose of Ian Moran, 24 to 25 touches for the senior, number 6. The running back is about 5'11", 190 pounds. And he's a guy for Charlevoix that they're going to depend on and lean on. But so the Raiders can also depend on that experienced offensive line when they have a returning all-state honorable mention wrestler in Sawyer Blazik up front, in addition to Andrew Glass playing left tackle and his brother. So you got bookend tackles for the Glass brothers. So when you have that opportunity, and for anybody tuning in, if you know the Glass brothers, I mean, those guys are jacked. You know,
Well, and if
kudos to them.
you want to get a quick snippet of what you might see from Charlevoix, you know, if you haven't checked out the hype videos that have been put out by the Next Level crew yet, you need to check out the hype videos for all 5 of these schools, and you may see some of these players in a highlight already and get an insight as to what you may witness this year.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. And if you're just looking at what Charlevoix has coming back, I think the biggest thing is that they don't have the depth that they've had in recent years. The depth that they've had the last year and the year before that when they went to the district championship game, ultimately lost. That was up in Menominee 2 years ago. They had a lot of seniors. They had a lot of depth. They could play, 75% of the snaps for a lot of their starters, and they could play one series on offense, play every series on defense, and then not play the next defensive series because they were well rested. And that's one of the things. And looking at it from that perspective, I think they've got to stay healthy. They've got to stay in games. They don't want to get down by 2 scores. That way they have to change their game plan. I think for them, they want to stay within 1 score of the opponent at all times unless they're a couple scores ahead of them. I really think that's what Charlotte is going to be able to do to succeed this year. And I think we'll see some more air attack offense. I think that they'll be able to get their athletes in space a little bit more as well.
Well, protection, you're able to open it up in the playbook a heck of a lot more. And obviously, you've got the right people in line to protect that quarterback. You might be able to see some different stuff from them this year.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just the way that they're able to ball handle. And I think the question is, how do they play quarterback? Do they go right with Colin Jess, or do they allow Ian Moran to get some reps there as well? That's going to allow me to transition here. You can catch that Charlevoix game. That game will kick off at 6:30 tomorrow night, actually. So an early kick between Charlevoix and Unionville Sablewing area schools. That game will be kicking off at 6:30. You can see that on nextlevelbroadcasting.net, or you can also see that on Charlevoix Raider Athletics on YouTube.
And isn't that game being played in Clare?
That game will be in Clare, yes. So it's an alternate site game, And as you see on the screen there, Charlevoix versus Unionville-Sibleying on Raider Athletics, Next Level Broadcasting, or you can just watch on nextlevelbroadcasting.net to make it simple. And you can also check in once 7 o'clock gets around. You can see all the games right on the Next
That's
Level
so great about the
Broadcasting.net.
website is that you can check in on basically everything. You don't need to wait for us to do a check-in possibly during a broadcast. You can check out all the games at once.
Exactly, and so you can do the split by screen, the screen by screen, split screen, however you want to say it. Whether you want to watch the Charlevoix game and then click on the East Jordan game, Jared and I will be there up in Manistee. So whatever way you want to slice your pie tomorrow night, you can do it here with Next Level Broadcasting. That's going to transition us into the final game of this week's 5-game slate, and we'll talk about Traverse City St. Francis versus Glen Lake. And Tom, I'm going to bring this to you first because earlier on pre-show I said, what game this week do you think means the most to the two schools playing in it? And you said Glen Lake, Traverse City St. Francis. And I want you to expand on that a little bit more.
I mean, you're talking about a historical rivalry that goes easily back to the 1980s at least. I remember watching 7 and 4 and 9 and 10 sports coverage in the evening news, and Glen Lake was always a powerhouse. St. Francis was always a powerhouse, and more so basketball back in those days. But they've been bitter rivals for a long time. And even though the divisions, Glen Lake has given up some size as far as the division they're coming from, you can expect this to be a really tight match, I think. I mean, the question is, and you've seen more of the practice,
Right.
For St. Francis than any of us. That's going to be the question: is St. Francis rolling? And the little bit that I saw early in the offseason or preseason, they looked really sharp.
So one of the things about the Gladiators this year is they return a 2-year varsity starting quarterback in Tyler Endress. And whenever you have, we talked about it with Braden Flutie in Elk Rapids, a 1-year starting quarterback returning, but with Endress in Traverse City, he's got 2 years of experience and he's shown an ability to not shrink under the pressure. This is a young man who pitched in the state championship game in baseball this year. And pitching, I think, is even more of an isolated position, maybe the loneliest position in all of sports, outside of goaltender in hockey, is pitching. So you got to have a good complexion mentally, and I think he's the right guy under center. But the Gladiators will want to go back and mix in some old school St. Francis football. I mean, fullback dive and then dealing cards back there.
But Endres is also multi-threat too. So
Yes.
you could easily use him as a runner, or you could, if you want to do some trickeration, you could use him in about any way possible.
And that's another thing, like when I saw some of their scrimmage and some practices, they were not only mixing in full house backfield, which is the staple of Traverse City St. Francis, but they're also going spread, whether they want to go trips into the boundary and then isolate their flanker and backside tight end. An X factor to look for, because he's probably one of the best overall athletes on the team, is Sam Wildfong. Sam Wildfong is their senior. He's their punter. He's their field goal kicker. He's their tight end. They bring him around on different types of lead blocks, on counters and whams. And he's usually the guy that if he's on the play side of the field, that's where the play is going to go. It's going to go to Sam Wildfong's side. So I think, Tom, you hit the nail on the head. I think the panel pretty much agrees that this will be the most, I don't want to say bad blood, but there's emotions here because of the history that goes back, so long, of these two teams separated only by about 20 miles.
Well, and if you're Glen Lake too, I mean, you've got a lot to play for. Not only, you get credit for showing up against the team in a higher division.
It doesn't matter how good Traverse City St. Francis is. A win against them in any way is a notch in your belt.
Absolutely. And if you're Glen Lake, the bonus of playing a team from a higher division, and if you could beat that team, and it's a rival that goes back decades, that's huge. You can expect them to really be dialed in.
Yeah, real quick, I talked about my game being an interesting one only because of the matchup.
Right.
That should be the most exciting game. Mine, I thought about because of the matchup, because you've got two up-and-coming teams that are looking to find their way, and hopefully one of them, or maybe both of them will have outstanding seasons. But we looked at my game also as being competitive, I guess, between the two teams as far as equal matchups. And so that's gonna do it for our show for today. We appreciate you checking in. Don't forget to look at your respectful game tomorrow that you want to check out, or you can check out all 5 games. And don't forget every place that you can check out these games, nextlevelbroadcasting.net. Check out on Facebook, and don't forget to click the link. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Next Level Broadcasting, and especially for Gaylord St. Mary's, go to Gaylord St. Mary's Athletics, so you can check out there and subscribe to them. For the Elk Rapids game, also go to elkrapidsfootball.com. And once again, for Tom Clementson, for Jared Stamen, for Charles Strail running production, and for myself, Eric Huffman, thank you so much for checking us out tonight, and we will see you at the games tomorrow. This has been the Next Level Broadcasting Show. Have a good night.